The Galactic Council convened as it had every year in the Grand Chamber of the Citadel of Stars representatives from all corners of the galaxy gathered in this monumental structure to discuss the fragile balance of power in a galaxy teeming with dozens of species, each with their own politics and ambitions. The atmosphere in the chamber was always tense, but this day something felt different. The usual hum of voices discussing trade routes, defense pacts, and diplomatic tensions was interrupted by a sudden burst of static on the comms, a strange signal from deep within the uncharted region of space. It was almost like a heartbeat of some kind, rhythmic and repetitive. No one had ever heard anything quite like it before. The lead counselor, a tall blue-skinned being named Alex, immediately silenced the chamber with a wave of his hand. His eyes narrowed as the signal continued its steady pulse through the room, flickering on the screens that lined the walls. "What is this?" Alex's voice was calm, but laced with suspicion. "Unidentified signal," replied a technician from the Xanthar delegation. "It's not from any known ship or species we've encountered." Alex's brow furrowed. The council had dealt with countless races and anomalies, but nothing like this. They were used to hearing encrypted transmissions, but this one was unlike any signal they had encountered before. The cadence was too perfect, almost as if it was deliberate. "What does it say?" asked Counselor Miru, an elegant but cautious representative of the Valetari people. She glanced up at the screen as the message slowly decoded. The words were simple, but they sent a ripple of unease through the room. "Human warship en route, standby for arrival." The room was silent for a long moment. No one spoke, not even a whisper. No one had ever heard of these so-called humans. They weren't listed in the galactic archives. They had no known planet, no significant presence in the galaxy, and no history of interstellar conflict. "Is this some kind of joke?" Alex's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. "Humans, what are they? Some fringe species who thinks they can make a name for themselves by disrupting our affairs?" The words were dismissive, but there was a flicker of doubt behind his eyes. The council had seen countless species try to claim a place at the table. Some had been nothing more than fleeting sparks, quickly snuffed out by the greater powers of the galaxy. But something about this transmission felt different. The certainty in the message, the calmness of the words made it feel like more than just a simple threat. Another delegate from the Xalarians, a race known for their advanced technological knowledge, raised a hand. "I would suggest caution before dismissing this." The Xalarian's voice was steady and measured. "We cannot ignore the possibility that this is legitimate." Alex scoffed and waved a hand dismissively, but deep down, even he couldn't completely shake the feeling that something was different. Something was about to shift in the galaxy in ways they couldn't yet understand. Across the room, the screens flickered once more, and a new message appeared, this time much clearer, the words echoing through the chamber. "This is Captain Elias Drake of the human warship. We are approaching your space. Prepare for arrival." The entire room went still again. The name of a human echoed in the silence, and for the first time that day the council began to wonder if perhaps this wasn't just another trivial announcement from an insignificant species. Perhaps something much larger was on the horizon. As the message echoed through the chamber, a strange chill spread through the room. It wasn't fear yet, but something akin to it. An unfamiliar uncertainty hung in the air for the first time in centuries. The council was caught off guard by an unknown force. Counselor Miru's gaze swept across the room, her expression a mixture of confusion and intrigue. "What do we know about this human race?" she asked quietly, her voice breaking the uneasy silence. The Xalarian delegate who had spoken earlier adjusted the data screen in front of him, his long fingers moving swiftly across the holographic interface. "There is no official record of any species called humans in the galactic archives," he said after a moment of intense concentration. "Nothing even remotely resembling them is listed, not a single known colony or civilization under that name." Alex leaned forward, his sharp eyes fixed on the glowing transmission. "Then why are they contacting us now?" He asked the question with the same dismissive tone as before, but this time there was a flicker of genuine curiosity beneath his words. The Xanthar technician who had first detected the signal spoke up. I've traced the origin of the message. It's coming from a location just beyond the borders of our territory, well outside the range of known human civilizations. There's no way they should have made it this far." Myru's brow furrowed at that. If they have no known settlements or history, then how have they managed to build such a ship that could travel so far into Council space? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered for a moment, until another voice spoke up from the back of the room, a low and steady voice that seemed to carry the weight of generations. "It is possible," said the ancient Tarvan representative. Orin, his species, had been around for millennia, and had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, that these humans have developed a technology far beyond what we understand. His words settled over the room like a cold wave, and the council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The thought that a species with no known history could possess such power unsettled them all. Alex finally broke the silence again, his voice sharp with authority. "We will not be bullied by some unknown race into making concessions. We have worked too long and too hard to build our alliances for some rogue species to come in and disrupt the delicate balance we have established." Myru raised a hand to calm him. "Alex, we cannot simply dismiss them. We don't know enough yet. We must hear what they have to say before jumping to conclusions." The tension in the room was palpable as the debate began to unfold. Some council members sided with Alex, others with Myru, and still others remained silent, unsure of what to make of this new player on the stage. It was then that the doors to the chamber opened with a soft hiss, and in strode a figure who seemed completely out of place among the council delegates, a human Captain Elias Drake, his features sharp and resolute, his posture confident, almost arrogant, as he stepped into the room. The council members stared in stunned silence as Drake's eyes swept across the room, his gaze meeting theirs with a calm intensity that seemed to pierce through the collective unease. "Councilors," Drake began, his voice even and composed, "I come in peace, but I come with a message that will change everything you know about this galaxy." He didn't wait for a response before continuing. "My ship is only the beginning of what humanity has to offer," he said as the screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing the image of the warship that had caused such a stir moments before. The room fell into an uneasy silence once again as the sight of the human warship filled the screens, its sleek and imposing design filling every corner of the chamber with its presence. "This is what a human warship looks like." Drake's words were simple, but they carried an undeniable weight that made every counselor feel the gravity of what was happening. They were no longer the ones in control. This was only the beginning. The room was suffocatingly silent as the human warship filled the screens, its design unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. It was sleek and organic, almost as if it were alive, yet it radiated power in every curve of its surface. Counselors exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of the image that loomed over them. Captain Elias Drake stood at the center of the room, unmoving, his eyes locked onto the counselors with an unsettling calmness, as if the ship itself were simply an extension of his will. "Humanity," he said slowly, "has been underestimated for far too long." His voice was steady and confident as he gestured toward the image of the warship. "This is what we've built, and this is only the beginning." Myru, the Valetari representative, leaned forward, her expression a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "We've never seen anything like this before," she said, her voice carrying a sharp edge of concern. "How did humans manage to construct such a ship, and why are you revealing it now?" Drake's gaze didn't waver. "We've had to fight for every step we've taken to survive as a species," he said quietly. "Our history has been full of conflict, but it has made us stronger. It's forged us into something you don't understand yet." Alex, the Zinthar representative, shook his head with a scoff. "This is absurd," he said dismissively. "You expect us to believe that your species, barely even known outside your own star system, has created a warship capable of rivaling anything in our fleet?" Drake's lips twitched slightly as if he'd expected such a response. "You don't have to believe me," he said. "You'll see for yourselves soon enough." As if on cue, the room's communication systems blared to life with an urgent transmission. The technician at the back of the chamber turned pale as the signal's frequency matched one that had been detected hours earlier. "The warship has entered council space," the technician announced hesitantly. "It's approaching at an unreasonably high speed. We cannot stop it." Panic rippled through the room as council members rushed to their consoles. The security forces immediately sprang into action, scrambling to prepare for whatever might come next. But Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "We'll not be intimidated by this," he said, his voice shaking with suppressed anger. "Call our fleets, we'll show them that they are nothing." But Drake remained calm, his gaze never leaving Alex's furious expression. "You'll need more than fleets to stop what's coming," he said softly, "and you'll need more than threats to understand why we're here." The room was tense as the seconds stretched into eternity. The warship, now only moments away from entering the heart of Council space, Drake had made his point, but the real test was about to begin. Moments later, a new alert blared from the chamber's primary console, and the main screen flashed with an image of the human warship as it glided into view above the Council flagship. The scale of the vessel was so immense that it seemed to swallow the stars around it. The sleek contours of its body reflected a cold and chilling light as it hovered in position. Council members watched in stunned silence as the ship's sheer presence sent a wave of awe and dread through them. It was not just the size of the ship or its design that held their attention, but the way it seemed to be alive, as if its very existence resonated with something far beyond their understanding. "Tell me now, Drake," said his voice carrying the weight of authority. "What will you do with us?" The council had no answer. They were no longer the dominant power in the room. The sight of the human warship hanging ominously over the council flagship was like nothing any of them had ever seen before. It was not just a ship, it was an entire force contained within one living vessel. The room was filled with a strange mix of awe and dread as the council members stared at the immense ship. The hum of the chamber's lights seemed to grow louder as every second ticked by. Drake stood unwavering in the center of the room, as if this moment was the culmination of something inevitable. The council's shock had yet to settle, and the silence between them stretched taut with anticipation. "Is this truly necessary?" Councilor Rylus of the Atrani asked, her voice soft, but tinged with fear. "Why have you come here? What do you want from us?" Drake met her gaze without hesitation, his eyes cold yet filled with something deeper, as though he had already seen the answers unfold before him. "We came to make one thing clear," he said, his voice unwavering. "We are not here to beg for your permission, nor do we seek your favor. What we are offering is protection and a future, but it is one you will have to earn." His words rang through the room like a challenge, and the counselors were left speechless for a moment as they tried to process what had been said. 100 thoughts spun through their minds, but none could settle into anything concrete. Alex, the Zinthar representative, was the first to recover from the shock, his voice hard and filled with suspicion. "You speak of protection," he sneered, "but we are the ones who have kept the peace in this galaxy for millennia. We are the ones who decide who gets to rise and who falls. We do not need you or your threats." Drake's expression remained unreadable. "You believe that your power can hold the galaxy together, but the truth is it is fragile, and when the storm comes it will shatter like glass. The galaxy is changing, and your time is running out." The tension in the room grew thicker still as Drake's words cut through the surface-level arguments and touched something deeper within each council member. They had all heard the rumors, the whispers of a new order rising from the ashes of the old, but no one had truly believed it until now. Rylus swallowed hard as she stood up, her voice a little more resolute this time. "And what if we do not accept your terms? What if we do not welcome you or your warship into our fold?" she asked. Drake's gaze never left hers, his response measured and calm. "Then you will watch as others accept what we offer, and you will find yourselves alone," he said simply. "The future does not wait for those who cling to their old ways." The words struck like a hammer, and for the first time in ages, the council members felt their grip on the galaxy's future slipping. They had long prided themselves on their unity, their strength in numbers, their overwhelming power, but Drake's words and the looming presence of the warship forced them to question everything they had taken for granted. Just then the technician at the back of the room spoke up, his voice filled with urgency. "We're receiving a new transmission from the human warship. It's a live feed from their battle systems. The room fell into a stunned silence. As the feed flickered to life on the screens, the image was of a faraway system under attack, a fleet of marauders clashing with local forces who were clearly outmatched. The human warship came into view as it tore through the marauders' fleet with terrifying precision. The ship's weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Each strike landed with an unnerving grace, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. "Do you see now?" Drake's voice was low and unyielding. "This is what we offer: protection, not just for ourselves, but for all who choose to stand with us." The counselors sat in stunned silence. The demonstration had left them with no illusions. The human warship was a force unlike any they had encountered before, and it was clear that humanity had something far greater at stake than mere survival. The question was no longer whether to accept humanity's offer, but whether they could afford to refuse. The room remained silent as the images of the battle unfolded on the screens, the destruction of the marauder fleet appearing almost effortless. The warship moved with an eerie precision, as if it were an extension of a singular, focused will. Every strike seemed calculated, perfect. No hesitation, no wasted effort. The marauders, clearly no match for such advanced firepower, were decimated in mere moments. Counselor Maru shifted uneasily in her seat, her eyes locked on the display. "We've never seen anything like this. The sheer scale of their weaponry." Her voice trailed off, as if she were grasping for words that could capture the unimaginable. Drake's voice cut through the murmur of astonishment, his tone steady and firm. "This is the reality you face. We are not here to threaten you, but to show you what we are capable of. Humanity is not a species to be ignored any longer. Our warship is not just a weapon. It is a symbol of everything we have fought for, everything we have survived. And we will not stand by and watch while the rest of the galaxy falls into chaos." The tension in the chamber thickened as every counselor felt the weight of his words. It wasn't just about the power of the warship, it was the promise behind it. Drake was offering them a glimpse into humanity's future and a choice. Alex, still standing at the front, glared at the display. "You want us to accept you as equals, but what happens when you're not satisfied with mere protection? What happens when your ambitions grow beyond just defense? What is it that you truly want from us?" Drake did not flinch at the accusation. Instead, he stepped forward, the room's attention riveted on him. "You think that humanity wants to dominate you, but that's not our goal. Our goal is survival, not conquest. We understand that we are a part of something greater, a galaxy full of different powers, cultures, and histories. But we will never again allow ourselves to be prey. If we have to take our place by force, we will. But we would rather stand by you as allies. The choice is yours." Myru stood up, her eyes searching Drake's face for any sign of dishonesty. "You speak of protection, but what happens when others choose not to stand with you? What happens when a different force challenges your power? You will need more than a warship to keep the galaxy in check." Drake's gaze softened just slightly, and for a brief moment, the sharp edges of his demeanor seemed to fade. "You're right," he said, his voice quieter now. "Our warship can destroy fleets, but it can't stop the galaxy from changing. It can't stop the people from rising up, from challenging the old ways. But what we can offer is something far more important. We can offer a future where humanity isn't just surviving. We're thriving alongside you. Together, we can create something better than the fractured galaxy we've known for so long." The room was still. His words had hit their mark. Alex crossed his arms, staring coldly at Drake. "And you expect us to simply accept this new order you're offering? You want us to bow to your survival?" Drake's eyes locked onto Alex's, and for a moment, there was an intense silence between them. Then Drake spoke, his voice low and even. "I don't expect you to bow. I expect you to listen, and then decide if you want to be a part of the future we're building, or if you'll stand against it and watch as others take our place." The counselors exchanged glances, the implications of Drake's words sinking in. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just placed itself at the center of it. Alex turned away, muttering under his breath, his mind clearly working to process everything that had happened. Myru, however, seemed to be weighing the situation with more care, her brow furrowed in deep thought. The other delegates, equally unsure, were left to wonder. Could they afford to let this human power grow unchecked? Or was joining them the only way forward? Drake didn't wait for an immediate answer. "I'll leave you with this," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Time is running out for this galaxy. The forces of chaos are already rising. You'll see soon enough that your old ways of maintaining peace won't last. It's your choice whether you want humanity to stand with you when that happens." And with that, he turned to leave the room, the weight of his words hanging in the air. The council had been given a choice, and now it was up to them to decide whether to accept humanity's offer or prepare for the storm on the horizon. The doors to the chamber slid shut behind Captain Drake with a soft hiss, and the room was plunged back into silence. The weight of his words lingered in the air, thick and oppressive. The council members remained in their seats, their minds racing as they tried to process the offer, the implications, and the undeniable presence of the human warship hovering just outside their grasp. Alex, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, was the first to speak after a long, tense silence. "He expects us to bow to him," he spat, his voice sharp with anger. "To let him dictate the future of the galaxy. That is not the way of the council." But Miru was not so quick to dismiss Drake's words. Her mind was turning over the possibilities, weighing the risks and benefits. "Alex, we cannot afford to ignore the reality of what we're facing. A warship like that is not just a weapon, it's a message. Humanity has clearly built something powerful, something we cannot easily overlook." Rylus, who had been quietly listening, now stood up, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "We've always prided ourselves on our unity, our shared vision. But if we don't at least consider what Drake is offering, if we dismiss him outright, we may find ourselves caught unprepared for whatever comes next. And that warship, if it's truly what he says it is, could be the first of many." Alex slammed his fist down onto the table, his anger flaring. "And if it is, we will face them, just as we have faced every threat in the past. We cannot let one species dictate the course of the galaxy. If humanity thinks they can take our place, they will learn the consequences of challenging the council." Myru raised a hand, her tone calm but firm. "Alex, your confidence is admirable, but this is not the same as facing the usual threats. Humanity isn't like the others we've encountered. Their survival has made them stronger, more adaptable than we could ever have predicted. We cannot afford to be blinded by pride or arrogance." Rylus nodded in agreement. "I've seen the records of their wars. The way they've fought through impossible odds, how they've clawed their way to the stars. They're survivors, and we cannot underestimate that." Alex scowled, clearly frustrated, but there was something in the room's atmosphere, something shifting, that he couldn't ignore. The others were considering Drake's offer, their minds already turning to the possibility of humanity's involvement. "Fine," Alex finally muttered. "But we will not simply accept their terms. We need to know more. What do they truly want? If they come to us claiming only to protect the galaxy, why are they showing their strength in such an aggressive manner?" Myru sighed, glancing toward the screen where Drake's warship still loomed large, a silent reminder of humanity's power. "The question isn't just what they want. It's whether we can afford to stand against them. We can't ignore the fact that humanity has the power to change everything. We can either choose to stand with them, or we can face the consequences of choosing to fight back." The room fell into silence again as the weight of the decision became clear. The council had always prided itself on its strength, its unity, but humanity had thrown that into question. What if Drake was right? What if their traditional ways of maintaining peace and order in the galaxy were no longer enough? Myru stood and turned toward the council's main display, where Drake's warship was still visible, its sheer size filling the screen. "Perhaps it's time to ask a different question," she said softly. Not what we stand to lose by accepting them, but what we stand to lose by rejecting them. Rylus, watching the images of the warship, nodded slowly. There's a part of me that wonders if we've already waited too long to make this decision. Alex stood rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. We've stood as the protectors of the galaxy for eons, and I won't let one ship, one species, undo everything we've built. But even Alex, in the depth of his defiance, could feel the creeping doubt that had taken root in the Council's heart. The moment of decision was drawing nearer, and with it, the realization that the future was no longer in their hands alone. As the tension in the room continued to build, the counselors couldn't escape the growing realization that the galaxy they knew was slipping away from their control. They had spent millennia crafting a delicate balance, an order that, until now, had seemed unshakable. But Captain Drake had shattered that illusion with a single visit, and the weight of his warship's presence bore down on them. Alex paced back and forth, his mind racing as he tried to reconcile the new reality with everything he had believed to be true. We've handled threats before, threats far greater than a single ship, he said, his voice rising with frustration. The Council has stood against galactic upheaval for centuries. Why should we fear a species that, until now, hasn't even been on our radar? Myru stood, her expression sullen, as she turned to face him. Alex, we've always had our fleets and our alliances, but humanity isn't like other races. We've never encountered a species that has fought so fiercely to survive, that has clawed its way into the stars without the benefit of ancient technologies or galactic backing. This is not just about a single warship. It's about a species that has the potential to rewrite everything. Her words hung in the air, and the room fell silent. Alex shot her a sharp look, but even he couldn't dismiss the unsettling truth in her tone. Humanity had shown more than just brute force. They had demonstrated a drive to survive that was unlike anything the Council had seen before. This was no ordinary species, and they could no longer treat them as such. I agree with Myru, Rylus said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. We cannot ignore what Drake is offering, no matter how difficult it is to accept. If we refuse them, we risk becoming irrelevant. Our influence will wane, and we may find ourselves left behind in a galaxy that no longer respects our authority. Alex clenched his fists, but even he couldn't deny the truth in Rylus's words. So, you would have us bend to their will, accept their dominance over us without even understanding their true intentions? He asked, his voice edged with bitterness. Myru stepped forward, her expression firm. I'm not suggesting we surrender, Alex. I'm suggesting we explore the option of joining forces. If humanity can help us maintain order in the galaxy, perhaps it's time to reconsider what that order looks like. We must change, or we risk being left behind. The debate raged on, but no resolution seemed possible. The decision weighed heavily on each counselor, but deep down, they all knew the truth. There was no turning back. The old ways were no longer enough. Something had to give. As the discussions wore on, a new message flashed on the Council's main display, a transmission from Drake himself. The screen flickered to life, and once again, Captain Elias Drake's calm, steady voice filled the room. We've waited long enough, he said, his tone unwavering. You've seen what we can do. You've seen the power we bring to the table. Now it's time to make your choice. The Council watched, transfixed, as the camera zoomed out to reveal the human warship hovering in space. It was even more imposing up close, its sleek, black form gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. There was no mistaking the message. This was not a mere display of power, it was an invitation. An invitation to join the future or be left behind. Your time is running out. Drake's voice echoed through the chamber. Choose wisely. And with that, the transmission ended, leaving the Council in a stunned silence. The warship lingered on the screen, its presence a constant reminder of humanity's arrival in the galaxy's power structure. No one spoke for several long moments. The room seemed to close in around them. the pressure of the decision palpable. Alex was the first to break the silence, his voice low and filled with a mixture of resignation and defiance. "We cannot afford to be weak," he said. "But we also cannot afford to ignore what is coming. It's time to make a choice." Myru's gaze softened, and she looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each counselor. "And that choice will define the future of the galaxy." The gravity of the situation settled in, and the council knew, deep down, that their decision would ripple through the galaxy for generations to come. The question no longer was whether they could hold on to the past, but whether they had the courage to embrace the future. The chamber was thick with tension, the weight of the decision pressing down on every counselor. The image of Drake's warship hung in the air, a constant reminder of the future they were being forced to face. The council had come to the point of no return, and now the time had come to decide. Alex stood at the far side of the room, staring out at the view of the warship, his face hard and resolute. "This is madness," he muttered under his breath. "We're not mere pawns in some human game. We are the council. We've kept the peace for centuries. We will not kneel before anyone." Myru watched him with a steady gaze. She understood his defiance, but she could no longer ignore the reality. "We are the council," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But we must evolve if we are to remain relevant. The galaxy is changing, Alex. The humans are a force unlike anything we've encountered. If we don't adapt, we risk being forgotten." Rylus, who had been deep in thought, finally spoke up. "We've always prided ourselves on unity. But unity means nothing if we cannot adapt to the times. Humanity is a part of this future now, whether we like it or not. We cannot continue to rule with an iron fist. We must learn to work with others, or we'll be left behind." Alex turned sharply to face Rylus, his frustration evident. "So, you would just give up everything we've built? Let them take the reins. This galaxy will fall into chaos without the Council's guidance." "Perhaps," Myru said quietly, "but perhaps we will be the ones to cause that chaos if we continue to resist the inevitable. Humanity may be a threat, but it could also be the key to preventing the greater chaos that is already starting to unfold." The room fell silent as each counselor wrestled with the magnitude of the decision before them. Could they truly accept humanity as an equal force in the galaxy, or was it better to fight, to maintain control, and risk everything they had built? Just then, the doors to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss, and a messenger stepped in, his face serious. "Counselors, a new development," he said. "We've received intelligence. A large coalition of pirate factions is advancing toward our borders. They've been emboldened by what they've heard of humanity's arrival. They're testing us." The news hit like a shockwave. The Council's deliberations had just been interrupted by the harsh reality of the galaxy's instability. The pirates had been a constant problem, but now they were gathering in force, sensing an opportunity in the wake of the Council's indecision. Alex's eyes narrowed. "So now we're supposed to turn to the humans for help. Let them come in and clean up our mess." Myru shook her head, her expression calm but resolute. "It's not just about cleaning up our mess. It's about ensuring the survival of the galaxy. The pirates won't stop at our borders, Alex. They'll spread, and they'll bring more instability than we can handle alone." Rylus stood up, her posture firm. "We've seen what the human warship can do. We've seen their power in action. We need them, Alex. For the first time in a long while, we need someone else's strength to preserve our way of life." Alex's fists clenched, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He knew that resistance to humanity could lead to more unrest, but accepting them meant surrendering to a new reality, one that he wasn't ready for. The choice was unbearable. The Council looked to him, waiting for his response. Alex's voice was low, strained. "I don't like it," he said, almost to himself. "But we don't have a choice. We can either fight and risk losing everything, or we can ally with humanity and face the unknown together." Myru nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Then we have made our choice. We will reach out to Drake. Alex turned to the communication console, his hand hovering over the control panel. For a moment, he hesitated, his mind still racing with doubt. But as he looked around at his fellow counselors, he saw no other path. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had forced them to face that change head-on. With a final breath, he pressed the button. The message to Drake was clear. We will stand with you.